What ancient texts reveal about your mystical moments? Have you ever experienced any of these? Sudden shifts in consciousness without warning, time feeling completely distorted, boundaries between you and everything else dissolving, overwhelming sense of knowing something beyond words, emotions transforming from fear to profound peace, feeling lifted out of normal reality, or lasting life changes after an intense spiritual moment. If 3 or more of these sound familiar, watch this entire video. You know that feeling when you're scrolling through Instagram at 2 a.m. and suddenly you stop? Not because of a funny meme or someone's vacation photos, but because something inside you just aches, like you're searching for something you can't even name? Yeah, that feeling. You're not broken, you're not weird, and you're definitely not alone. What nobody tells you about that restless searching is this. It's actually a signal, a really ancient one. And thousands of years ago, before social media, before smartphones, before the modern world made us feel so disconnected, people felt exactly what you're feeling right now. The difference is some of them found what they were looking for, and they wrote it down. Let me tell you about a guy named Enoch. No, not from a Netflix series. This guy lived about 4,000 years ago, and he had the same late-night existential crisis you've probably had. Except instead of scrolling through his phone, he'd walk outside and stare at the stars, feeling like there had to be something more. Here's where it gets interesting. Enoch's experience was recorded in what we call the Book of Enoch. It's not in your regular Bible. It's part of what scholars call apocryphal texts or hidden scriptures. The Ethiopian church preserved these ancient writings when most of the Western world forgot about them. And these texts, they're like a user manual for mystical experiences. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, great, another religious thing, hold on. What these ancient people documented isn't really about religion. It's about consciousness. It's about those moments when reality feels different, when time seems to stop, when you feel connected to something bigger than yourself. And the crazy thing is, their descriptions sound exactly like what people today call mystical experiences. Let me show you what I mean. In the Book of Enoch, chapter 14, this is literally what's written. And behold, clouds in the vision called me, and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightning sped and hastened me, and the winds in the vision caused me to fly, and lifted me upward, and bore me into heaven. Enoch continues, And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall which is built of crystals, and surrounded by tongues of fire. And I looked and saw a lofty throne. Now, I know that sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, but stay with me. What Enoch is describing, that sudden shift in consciousness, that feeling of being lifted out of normal reality, that encounter with something indescribably beautiful and terrifying. These are the exact same things people report today during deep meditation, ayahuasca ceremonies, or sometimes just spontaneous moments of transcendence. Then there's this guy Paul. You might know him from Christianity, but forget the religious context for a second. Paul was basically a first-century workaholic who had what we'd now call a complete psychological breakdown, followed by what might be the most documented mystical experience in history. In 2 Corinthians 12, Paul writes, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I do not know, God knows. And I know that this man was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter. Paul is literally describing what modern researchers call an out-of-body experience combined with ineffability, the inability to put the experience into words. Sound familiar? Ever had a moment so profound you couldn't explain it to anyone? Or consider Abraham. In the Apocalypse of Abraham, another ancient text preserved in Ethiopian manuscripts, chapter 15 describes his mystical encounter. And while I was still speaking, behold, a fire was coming toward me round about, and a voice was in the fire, and it lifted me up to the edge of the fiery flame. Abraham describes what happens to his consciousness. And I could not see, and I stood and trembled, and I fell upon my face, and heard a voice speaking. This is a textbook description of what psychologists now call altered states of consciousness, that disorienting but profound shift where normal sensory experience breaks down and something else takes over. Here's what blows my mind. These accounts, written by different people across different centuries, all describe the same patterns. And these patterns match exactly what modern people report during mystical experiences. So here's the question. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Maybe not the dramatic, caught up to heaven stuff, but what about these moments? You're hiking alone, and suddenly the boundary between you and the forest just dissolves. For a few minutes, you're not separate from the trees and the sky. You're part of it all, or you're listening to music, really listening, and time stops. The song ends, but you feel like you've been somewhere else entirely, like you touched something infinite. Maybe you're in deep conversation with someone you love, and suddenly you're not two separate people talking. You're one consciousness experiencing itself through two bodies. Or perhaps you've had that moment during meditation when your sense of I just disappears. You're still aware, but there's no you being aware, just pure awareness itself. These experiences have been happening to humans for millennia, and the ancient texts give us a roadmap for understanding them. When researchers study mystical experiences across cultures and centuries, they find 7 consistent characteristics, and these match exactly what the ancient texts describe. Sudden onset. Every ancient account uses words like suddenly, in an instant, without warning. Enoch says, "Clouds called me." Paul was caught up. Abraham heard a voice while I was still speaking. These experiences interrupt normal consciousness without permission. Have you ever had a moment like that? When something just shifted out of nowhere? Time distortion. Enoch describes seeing past and future simultaneously. Paul's experience felt both eternal and instantaneous. You might recognize this as those moments when 5 minutes feel like 5 hours, or when hours collapse into what feels like seconds. Dissolution of boundaries. Paul couldn't tell if he was in the body or out of the body. In the Pistis Sophia, another ancient text, Sophia describes becoming entirely light. This is that feeling when you're not sure where you end and everything else begins. Ineffability. The inability to describe it. Paul heard inexpressible words. Enoch saw things which cannot be recorded. Every person who's had a mystical experience knows this frustration, the most important thing that's ever happened to you, and you can't explain it to anyone. Noetic quality, a sense of profound knowing. These experiences don't just feel good, they feel true. Like you've accessed some fundamental truth about reality that you can't logic your way to. Overwhelming emotions. Abraham trembled and fell upon his face. Fear transforms into awe, confusion into clarity, isolation into the deepest sense of connection you've ever felt, and lasting transformation. After his visions, Enoch walked with God 300 years. Paul's entire life direction changed. Abraham became the father of 3 major world religions. Real mystical experience doesn't leave you unchanged. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, I've never experienced anything like that, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not spiritually inferior. You are not missing out. You are not less connected to whatever ultimate reality exists. If this content is resonating with you so far, please hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these ancient insights. The ancient texts are full of deeply spiritual people who never had dramatic mystical experiences. Joseph interpreted dreams, but we have no record of him having visions of his own. Ruth showed extraordinary devotion without a single recorded mystical encounter. The 12 patriarchs found God through ordinary faithfulness rather than extraordinary experiences. If you've never had a mystical experience, you're in good company. And honestly, that sense of wonder you feel watching a sunset, the gratitude that wells up when you help someone in need, the peace that comes when you forgive someone who hurt you, these are mystical experiences too. They're encounters with whatever force in the universe tends toward love, beauty, and connection. But if you have had experiences that match some of those 7 characteristics, there's something crucial you need to understand. The ancient texts warn about a specific trap that people with mystical experiences fall into: spiritual pride. The Pistis Sophia tells us that Sophia's downfall began when she thought her spiritual experiences made her superior to others. The Testament of Solomon warns that even great spiritual power can corrupt if it's mixed with ego. Paul, who had one of the most documented mystical experiences in history, chose to boast in his weaknesses rather than his revelations. He knew that the moment he made his experience about being special, he'd lose the very humility that made him worthy of the experience in the first place. Here's what I wish someone had told me years ago. Mystical experiences aren't spiritual merit badges. They're not proof that you're more evolved or enlightened than other people. If anything, they're responsibilities. They're invitations to serve others more deeply, not to feel superior to them. The ultimate mystical experience isn't some cosmic consciousness trip. It's love in action. Abraham's most profound spiritual moment wasn't his vision of cosmic history. It was when he welcomed 3 strangers with such radical hospitality that he unknowingly served angels. His deepest mystical encounter happened through supernatural kindness. The Gospel of Thomas, another ancient text preserved outside mainstream Christianity, records Jesus saying, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you." The mystical experience we all have access to is bringing forth love from within ourselves. This changes everything. Every act of genuine kindness is a mystical experience. Every moment you choose patience over irritation, forgiveness over resentment, service over selfishness, you're participating in the same divine reality that Enoch, Paul, and Abraham encountered. Your response to the person who cuts you off in traffic? Mystical experience potential. The way you treat the barista who's having a bad day? Divine encounter opportunity. Your decision to really listen when your friend needs to vent? Sacred ground. I know this might sound like I'm trivializing mystical experience, but I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm saying that the mystical isn't separate from ordinary life. It's the deepest dimension of ordinary life. The Pistis Sophia teaches that Sophia's redemption came not through seeking more spiritual highs, but through turning her attention to serving other souls who were lost in darkness. Her salvation came through love in action. The Book of Enoch tells us that after all his cosmic visions, Enoch's greatest accomplishment was simply that he walked with God. Not that he had extraordinary experiences, but that he lived an ordinary life with extraordinary faithfulness. So whether you're someone who's had mystical experiences or someone who hasn't, whether you meditate daily or can't sit still for 5 minutes, whether you're religious or spiritual or neither, you have access to the same profound reality. The question isn't whether you're having mystical experiences. The question is, are you living a mystical life? Are you paying attention to the miracle of your own existence? Are you treating other people like they're sacred beings having a human experience? Are you responding to the world with curiosity and compassion rather than judgment and fear? The most profound mystical experience available to any human being is the gradual realization that love is the fundamental force of reality. And that realization doesn't require special experiences or altered states of consciousness. It just requires willingness to see what's already there. Your ordinary Tuesday, lived with attention and kindness, is as mystical as Enoch's journey through 7 heavens. Your patient response to your difficult coworker is as sacred as Paul's vision of paradise. Your decision to call your mom even though you're tired is as profound as Abraham's encounter with angels. The ancient wisdom isn't trying to make you feel excluded from some elite spiritual club. It's trying to help you recognize that you're already living inside the greatest mystery of all, a universe that somehow produced beings capable of love, creativity, and consciousness. You don't need to have mystical experiences to live a mystical life. But if you live a mystical life, a life of attention, gratitude, and service, you'll start to see that everything you do is, in its deepest essence, mystical. Every breath is a gift you didn't earn. Every sunset is a daily miracle you get to witness for free. Every person you meet is carrying their own invisible struggles and secret beauty. Every choice you make either adds more love to the world or doesn't. This is what the ancient texts are really about, waking up to the sacred nature of ordinary existence. And that awakening doesn't require special experiences or secret knowledge. It just requires eyes to see and a heart willing to respond. If this video has opened up new perspectives for you, if something in these ancient stories speaks to whatever you've been searching for during those late night scrolling sessions, I'd love for you to stick around. Subscribe to Ethiopian Wisdom for more forgotten truths from ancient texts that somehow feel perfectly relevant to modern life. Hit that subscribe button if you want more of these deep dives into ancient wisdom that actually applies to your daily life. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had a moment that felt mystical? What was it like? Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. The ancient wisdom tradition continues through each of us who chooses to pay attention, to love more deeply, and to recognize the sacred in the ordinary. You're part of that tradition now, whether you realize it or not. Your life is the mystical experience you've been looking for. It always has been.